You're listening to the True North Success Podcast. Real stories of personal, professional, and financial wins from Alberta's best. With your hosts, Gary Ma and Amy Kim.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show today. My special guest is Jeremy Barretto. Jeremy is a strategic legal advisor known for his leadership as a co-chair of the National Major Projects team. He partners with industry leaders and communities and innovators to obtain approvals for resource development projects and help advance complex and large-scale projects across Canada. It's a real pleasure to have him on the show today. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you, Amy. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So, Jeremy, I gave a quick overview of your success, but can you fill in the detail of what your business is all about and what are your specialties and how long you've been doing this for?
Sure, Amy. So I am a lawyer based in Calgary. I'm a partner with the law firm Castles, and I'm also the co-chair of our national major projects team and chair of our regulatory group. So what I do is I help companies that are building many different types of projects, energy projects or natural resources projects like mines, pipelines, renewable energy, and also some infrastructure projects like railways and ports to obtain approvals from the government for their projects. In Canada, we have long approval processes for a lot of different types of project, particularly pipelines. And I help companies to navigate these approvals. And I've been doing this for about 12 years. And I'm very happy to speak with you today.
Awesome. So there are a lot of competitions in the regulatory industry. So what do you feel really sets you apart, and what comes naturally to you that maybe others find challenging?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of great lawyers in Calgary and across the country that work in this area. I think what sets myself and my firm Castles apart is we have a very practical approach. We are trying to work with our clients to solve their problems to get projects built, and we've been successful in building major projects such as the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which is a 1,200-kilometer pipeline from Edmonton, Alberta to Burnaby, BC. And the day-to-day that involves problem solving. And when there's a concern from an Indigenous nation or a landowner or environmental group, often we'll be working with the client to try and address the concern. And if that's not possible, going to a government decision maker to resolve the concern that way. And I think collaboration amongst our team, a lot of times when you're working on major projects in energy and natural resources, you need many different types of experts involved. And our team at Castles, we work very collaboratively. And I would note, and specifically with respect to Indigenous nations, there's a requirement in Canada to consult and, if necessary, accommodate Indigenous nations that are affected by government decisions. And we have a very strong Aboriginal law team that has, handles this, and we work together hand in glove to get done what the client needs to get done.
Awesome. So how did you get into that industry? Because is it something you're always interested in, get into, legal matter, or I always wondering learn about the background story. How
Background,
you get
sure.
into, yes.
Yeah, so I my undergraduate degree is in engineering. I graduated from University of Calgary. And I worked as an engineer for 5 years in the civil environmental field. So my focus was building water treatment projects. And I really enjoyed that field. It was interesting. It was technical. But I found what I was lacking was as I got more and more experience, I was learning about technologies that were more and more advanced and could have other environmental benefits. But oftentimes the standards and regulations were lagging the available technology because it takes some time for governments to catch up on, what is technically available. So I asked around within my work and my colleagues about how I could be more involved on the policy or regulatory side. And a lot of them said, get lots of experience in engineering, maybe do a master's or PhD, or do law. And then whenever I asked people, they'd give me some ideas, and law was sort of a through line. So I took the plunge in 2007. I went to law school at Osgoode Hall Law School at York University in Toronto to get a change of scenery. Really enjoyed it. And I came back to Calgary in 2010 to start my legal career. And at that point, I was very open to doing different areas. I did a stint in my articles, which is a training year for lawyers at the courts in Alberta, doing all kinds of areas, contractual law, criminal, family for a judge there. But I came out kind of wanting to return to my roots, to wanting to do environmental projects, the sort of legal side as opposed to the technical side of what I'm working on before. So that led me to here, and it's been very interesting working on things that were, have a lot of engineers involved or very technical, but trying to address the legal side and often trying to address concerns from non-technical people that don't want a wind farm in, their next door neighbor's backyard, or they don't like the route of a pipeline, or they have concerns about a project's effects on an Indigenous nation's ability to hunt and fish. And I found that very, fulfilling work because oftentimes we can get to some sort of resolution of these types of concerns.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like you started with as an engineer working in
Yeah,
the energy and environmental energy, and then you find some challenges and bureaucracies and hierarchies and like how can we navigate better, and then ended up you become a problem solver in the legal matters too. So
yeah,
I can see that you have a very strong knowledge in both industries as
yeah.
an engineer background and also now you're a legal advisor, so you understand both sides. So I can totally
Yeah,
see that.
yeah.
That's
And I'm not,
amazing.
these are big areas, lots of things, but I found just, especially where I'm based in Calgary and Alberta, there's a lot of companies are run by engineers, and speaking the same language is helpful.
Oh yeah.
And, understanding there's where people are coming from has been very helpful. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can say that. Awesome. That's an amazing story. Love that.
Thank you.
So anyone, listening who wants to get better at providing services and solving problems like you do, what would you like to tell them? Like
So I would
any
say,
go tips?
yeah, it's a great area to be in. I think right now you've probably read in the news about all the enthusiasm from the provinces and the federal government about building projects, building pipelines, building mines, building ports and trains and all these things. So I think this is a good time to get into these fields, whether it's legal or non-legal. And I would say there's lots of different educational backgrounds you can use, but I would say just try and get any experience. And that experience involves moving, it involves going oftentimes in remote areas. Like I was just in the Yukon, and there's all kinds of enthusiasm about new mining projects and energy projects there. Like go and get that experience for several years and then use that experience to build your career. Yes, I primarily work at a desk in an office now, but the first years of my career on the engineering side, I was in the field in a truck, driving around, looking at things and, managing projects. And I think just getting that experience wherever it is will help you as the country tries to build more things. And then the second piece of advice I'd make is really consider work with Indigenous nations. It's a big part of what we have to get right as a country. And there's a lot of quite frankly, jobs available, both with companies that are partnering with Indigenous nations or engaging with. And then with what I'm seeing increasingly is these Indigenous nations are hiring people to help them get involved in projects, run businesses. So I think that's another huge area, especially if you're willing to look in different locations to look at, the project work, but also the Indigenous work.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. So then, what is the one of the biggest challenges you had to overcome in your career? Because it sounds like you work with the multiple, partners and shareholders and the people who has an interest in each project. So, would you be able to share your challenges
Sure.
that
Yeah.
become
So I worked
successful?
on like one project for my entire career, the Trans Mountain Pipeline. It took about 12 years from start to finish. And it's in service now. So it's transporting about 1 million barrels per day of oil from around Edmonton to the west coast of Canada. It is
Wow.
Canada's only way of transporting oil to Asia because every other pipeline goes through the States or there's just not a significant terminal available. Uh, we never expected it to take that long, but there were significant challenges with a change of ownership of the company, some opposition over time that was resolved from the province of BC and other parties. But I think the biggest challenge is just sort of keeping going and keeping like what is the next task ahead of you, and it draws that task, and the next one, the next one, the next one. Because sort of like I'd almost compare it to a tennis match where in any day you may have something that doesn't go your way, a serve or you miss something, but it's the game is not over and you have to keep going. And I think on major projects, there's just all kinds of challenges, and you would just have to address them one at a time, and you will reach an end. And actually, when you get to the end, we were just out at the completed project. I got to view a ship loading at the dock and then going off to export. It felt a little bit surreal because we'd worked on something for so long. To see it actually built and working was a surreal moment. But I would say just keep going because it's Canada is a large and complex country with a lot of interest, and a lot of projects start and stop. It can sometimes feel like things aren't happening, but if your organization wants to proceed, you just take it one day at a time, and there'll be dark days and light days. But just if you just keep advancing, you will get to the finish line eventually if you reasonably address concerns.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that totally reminds me of like a journey that I study in real estate. Sometimes it takes because I do develop projects in to the land, and sometimes takes so long time to deal with the city, getting a permit and
Yeah.
getting all the design and working with the architect and make sure that we align with all the um, the code and the city permits like that. And sometimes that we don't see that each path how gonna unfold, but as long as we keep on working on our vision, the original vision and faith that you're gonna at the end you're gonna all complete. So that just remind of a lot of journey. Like I think that applies to any journeys, right? So the people who success at the end, they have that strong vision and the belief that it's gonna work out at the end. We not always see that the path, the clear path. But as long as we stay with that, and like you mentioned, that even though like sometimes the ownership changes and how it's gonna work out, and so many partnership changes, but I love that story. So I see
Yeah,
that
I
there's
think
lots of
I
common.
think it's not dissimilar from real estate. From what I hear of people to actually create a building, you've got all these challenges to overcome. And I think it's people are typically good at identifying a problem. So the problem in the real estate context might be your land use permit, maybe the initial sale or purchase. It could be construction challenges, it could be financing challenges. And it's easy to be like, well, the city hasn't given us our permits. But what do you do about it? Right. And
Exactly.
the team I work with at the law firm, I'm always like really pushing them to say, if we send something, an email, a memorandum, an argument to a client that's hired us to help solve these problems, the first sentence of it should be our recommendation of what they should do. Because I think in any industry, it's human nature to be focused on the problem, to be,
Yeah.
well, we don't have this permit, so we're never going to meet our schedule. It's like, okay. So should we call the city? Should we go to court? Should we change the design? Should we, like what are the options?
Yeah.
And then use your brain to determine the best option and proceed with that. Because I think
Mhm.
that's how you achieve something is through a lot of steps to push the rock up the hill. Eventually you get to the top, but any day you let your hand off of it, the rock will slide backwards and then you're not advancing. So yeah.
That is so true. Yes, I love that. That a lot of people focusing more often focusing on the problems why cannot they cannot do it rather
Yeah.
than focus on okay, so what else is the options, what we can do about it, right? So
Yeah. And I think even people early in their career, it's a very good skill to practice um, solutions, right? To practice. And if you're working with, more senior people team, but to say, what do you think we should do? Because I find people starting out, you want to defer. So you want to say, well, in the real estate context, I don't know what to do. I don't have experience, but use your brain and think about it and say, I think we should do this. And maybe experienced people will agree with you, and maybe they'll disagree with you. But starting to flex that muscle of
Mhm.
how like what do I think we should do is a great model in any industry, including law, including real estate, to start to be known as a problem solver, starting to know as someone who gets things done, someone who knows who thinks outside the box. Because if you're waiting for someone else to solve it, at some point that person's going to say, why don't I just solve it myself? Right? But if you make yourself helpful to others and it's like, oh, Amy, she's always on it. Amy always does this well. They'll come to you with the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. And I think that's really great, advice to, help people advance. So
Yeah, and I love that what you said that earlier, that even though sometimes uncertain, but just take one step at a time, and then it helps to grow that muscle, and then you just keep moving forward, right?
totally. Yeah. And I think that's like a mentor to mine said I was working at a legal clinic when I was a student, and we'd have many, many files of people that were it was a landlord tenant clinic, and you get free advice. So people that were going to be evicted. So we'd have 30 or 40 files. And I'd have a review with her, and she'd say, what's happening with this file? And I'd say, well, I haven't had time. I've been too busy. And she said, you're not too busy to at least do look at each thing once a week. So her point to me was always advance something a little bit, even if it's just you've read it and you put a note in your calendar to look at it next week. You're not leaving it, and I think that really stuck with me over time. And it's been in our firm we talk about people who do business development. So obviously there's doing work, but there's trying to get new work. And a common trait of very successful people who are providing professional services, so it could be accountants or management consultants or lawyers, is they're always doing a little bit of business development. So even when they're very busy, they're posting to LinkedIn, they're doing an article, they're making a phone call, they're setting up a lunch. Because if they're not doing that all the time, you'll have dead times, right? You'll finish something big and then you'll have nothing. And then you'll do some business development, and then 6 months later, maybe you get something. But I think that little bit all the time is a really good thing to think about. So that's the way you don't ignore things that are important but not urgent, because you're doing things that are urgent all the time. But maybe there's something very important, like maybe changing how your business runs, or changing your software, or hiring a new person could be very important long term. And you can advance that, on a week to week basis with small things while you're busy doing what's needed now, right?
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, that sounds like, like we don't have time to develop because we are so busy making money, but
Yeah,
actually because we are not focusing on and investing in our own skill sets development, so that
yeah.
actually takes longer to help other people, or creating making money because the tool is not sharpened enough.
Yeah, 100%. It's hard to move yourself away from what's paying you and just focusing 100% on that. But I find the challenge then is that will come to an end, right? Like at some
Yeah.
point, you'll finish your project, your real estate deal, your whatever. And then what next? And a lot of people I find starting out their careers, they think, oh, then you should hand me something else. And it's like, yes, if you have a boss, maybe they will. But if you start getting used to being able to manage multiple things and have something, developing for when this deal's done, you can do the next one. You end up very successful. And I think you also end up sought after, because the alternative to that is to put your head in the sand. And if anyone asks you for anything, you say no because you're busy. And then you get a reputation for saying no. And that's fine. People maybe come back once or twice, but after a while, they stop. Right. And that's not
That's so
great if
true.
you're in the business of selling a service, right? You want people to come back to you, right?
That is so right. And also, how like I can see that you have very open-minded and growth-minded and thinking out of box and try solving problems. That was there any books or any materials that it keeps you more educating yourself or get better at it? How
Yeah, yeah.
how you become have that a very open-minded and positive mind?
Yeah, thank you. I would recommend two books. So the first is called
Yeah.
Radical Candor, and it's a book written by a former Google Kim Scott. So she was an executive at Google, and she observed how bosses give feedback, and she found that overall there was a problem at two ends of the spectrum. So at one end of the spectrum, bosses would just give vanilla feedback. Oh, you're great, everything's good, and not they wouldn't want to deal with problems because it was too awkward. And at the other end of the spectrum, there were bosses that just gave negative feedback. You're the worst. I can't believe you do this. Like, you got to stop making mistakes. And so what she came up with is this method that's described in her book, and there's a podcast and many things. That's basically the thrust of it is if you make your team members believe that you care about their career, that you're trying to help them long term, they will be much more open to candid feedback. So how I think that is achieved in a practical level is having check-ins with people you work with, if you're managing them or supervising them, to say, like, how are things going? Are things good? Like, trying to gain their trust that you're on their team. And then when the time comes and it's you have to tell them more critical feedback, they're not closed off to it and they're not feel attacked. They understand that you're trying to help them improve. So that's the first book I'd really recommend anyone managing. I have a small but mighty team of about 7 people, and it's great for that. And then the second one is called The Activator Advantage. The Activator Advantage. It's from basically some authors from the Harvard Business Review, and it's mainly focused on people in the services industry that are selling their time. But it's what I suggested earlier was over time, people that are in services like accountants and consultants and lawyers have shifted from a model of finder, minder, grinder, which means the finder gets the work, like the rainmaker. The minder manages the work and the grinder does the work, to a more it's evolved over time to a model where the most successful person is called an activator. And what an activator does is, like I mentioned before, they are always doing business development. Even their busiest day of the year, they're going to send an email, they're going to do something, and a little bit all the time. That's the first of 3 pillars. And then the second pillar from activators is they're like incorporating others into the team that meets their client or the people they're selling to. So a lot of areas, if you have a client and you're working with many other people, you may be tempted to keep the client your contact and not like share it with others. And in that case, because you want all the credit maybe of making that sale or making that deal. But they've done studies at Harvard and they found that people who invite all of their team members that have relevant experience to meet their client to get more connected, they make more money. Because the clients, if they want a tax lawyer, they don't want to have to talk to the corporate lawyer to get to the tax lawyer. They want to talk to the tax lawyer directly. So that's bringing more people into the relationship is very successful. And the third pillar from activators is basically offering to clients services that they may not know about. So obviously you go for lunch and you ask for work and happy to help you. That's table stakes. That's baseline. What you want to do next is to say, oh, look, there's this new legal development out, and it's really changed how employment agreements are considered by the courts. If you'd like, I can go through all of your employment agreements to determine if they need updates. That is gold star, right? Where you not only ask for work, make a relationship, but you're offering something useful that's come up. So those are the 2 resources I would recommend: is Activator Advantage from the Harvard Business Review authors, and then Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Both excellent management business type books.
Awesome. I love it. Like, yes. So thank you so much for those recommendations.
You're
So
welcome.
it sounds like things are very going well for you and your business. And a lot of a lot of the legal professionals are looking toward the future and they're looking at how they can create a real passive monthly cash flow, especially during those days like inflation going on, uncertainty in the economy. Have you had any experience with creating any real passive monthly cash flow and even replace their current active income? What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so I'm not engaged in private business personally, but I do have a number of colleagues that have looked at in the real estate field or with being landlords of commercial properties is another area. And I think it's interesting if you can manage it. So I think there's definitely innovation there. And the other part of it is we're experiencing a lot of disruption in the economy in general due to AI. And I think looking at other models of service delivery, like the right now, if you hire an accountant or a lawyer or a consultant, there's usually an hourly rate, a billable hour. But I think there's a lot of room for, yeah, looking at other models, like maybe a flat fee. Maybe you're offering like a subscription model where you say we'll be on standby, backed by AI tools and things like that. But I think that's early days from there. And I would say a lot of these industries, like the professionals, are the most in need of reform because they're very traditional. But yeah, and I would say for because a number of my colleagues that have engaged in business, usually it's connected to their expertise. So if they do real estate, for example, real estate legal side, then they'd be very comfortable, I think, doing maybe some other real estate, business related items. But it just takes a very organized person to handle multiple things like that, and obviously a good business team or a trusted group that you would do it with. So.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for your sharing your thoughts. So as we are wrapping up our interview, what exciting plans or initiatives do you have in the work for the next 6 to 12 months?
Thank you. So we have our new national major projects team at Castles. So we are a national law firm with offices in Calgary, Vancouver, and Toronto. And what we realized in earlier this year, there's such a desire to build in Canada. There's a desire to move from the perception around the world that Canada is very complicated. We can't get anything done. It takes a long time to building. And what we did is we pulled together our professionals from different areas, like regulatory, what I do, which is approvals, my colleagues that do Aboriginal law, corporate, tax, energy. And we organize ourselves together to say, if we want to execute these major projects, we can provide a team to have a team-based approach to do them. And it's been a huge success. We've had a lot of folks reach out to us. We've had great events, and we're really going to double down in this area in the new year. We'll be announcing some events with some very high-profile speakers at our offices, and basically, it seems that clients increasingly want us to help them engage with different stakeholders, Indigenous nations, government, and others to help to put together these projects and get them done quickly and provide strategies. So I see that to be a big thing in 2026 as we continue to try and, like I said, get steel in the ground on projects, but also respect the affected communities, landowners, Indigenous nations, and others, but just doing so in a quicker way. So it'll just require much more effort in a shorter amount of time to reach that result.
Oh, awesome. So it sounds like lots of great, exciting projects upcoming. So looking forward to hearing more from you. So Jeremy, thank you so much for your time today and sharing some of your great insights and tips with us. So it
Thank you
was
for
a real
inviting me, Amy. I
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Yeah, so it was a real pleasure to have you on the show today, Jeremy. If people would like to connect with you, how they can get a hold of you?
Sure. My email is jbarretto@castles.com. That's JBARRETTO at castles, CASSELS.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Want to share your success story? Apply to be a guest at truenorthsuccessshow.com/guest. We'd love to hear from you.